After that godly twist at the end of the first part of Lucifer Season 5, we know what you desire: more Lucifer! While many may be considering going to the comics to get that Lucifer fix, is it really the same story? Conceptually, the basic idea for both Lucifers is the same. After billions of years, Lucifer gets bored of his job ruling the underworld and decides to retire to a piano bar called Lux. From there, things are very different though. The Lucifer in the comics is an incredibly different character than the TV show's Lucy that we all know and love. The most notable difference between the two is their look. Lucifer Morningstar was first introduced in the pages of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, where he was obviously based off of rock legend David Bowie. Eventually, for his own series, Morningstar's look was altered a bit to look like an older version of Bowie with a more subdued hairstyle. Finally, in the last arc of the main series, Lucifer gets scarred by Maze, and has worn it across his face ever since. Frankly, I like the later Lucifer much better, because the original one looks like little orphan Annie meets Danny Rand from Netflix's Iron Fist. Lucy, on the other hand, is the epitome of the phrase tall, dark, and handsome. He has slick black hair, dark brown eyes, and a bone structure that will allow him to somehow play both Bruce Wayne or the Joker without breaking a sweat. Seriously, did Tom Ellis even have to say a word in his audition? Or did he just walk in and they were like, yep, there's our sexy devil, everyone else can go home now? So which one has the better look? In this case, I'm gonna have to go with the Tom Ellis version of the character. John Constantine already had the marked, covered-on blonde rock star-inspired anti-heroes. Let's be real, Tom Ellis' look and charm has carried Lucifer through multiple cancellations. He's the iconic Morningstar at this point. The Lucifer Morningstar character was created by Neil Gaiman for Vertigo's Sandman. That means that the original character was firmly set in the DC universe, alongside other beings like the Spectre and the Phantom Stranger. He rarely ever interacted with the other larger-than-life characters in the universe, but he was definitely in their pantheon. His father is even referred to as the Presence, or DC Comic Books' take on God. Frankly though, the comic book Lucifer barely ever comes up in any other DC story. There's a whole other devilish character named Neuron, who serves that sort of Faustian demonic David Bowie role against the likes of the Justice League. The Lucifer TV show, however, very much does not take place in any continuity that features DC characters, for the most part. While the Lucifer show doesn't feature any superheroes or characters from the Sandman pantheon, he did briefly appear in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Apparently, the show does exist within the DC Multiverse as Earth 666. However, it's revealed that John Constantine from Earth 1 helped Lucifer bring Maze into the Lux. For this, he was able to call in a favor, a card that would allow him to go to Limbo to get Oliver Queen. So which version benefits more from their DC Comics influence? Honestly, neither one either seems to care about anything going on in the DC universe. Even the TV Lucifer seems bored by the concept of the multiverse ending. We'll just call this one a tie, shall we? The actual adventures undertaken by the two very different devils is one of the areas where they differ the most. The comics Lucifer takes a page from Sandman and Hellblazer by depicting a globe-trotting anti-hero who most outsmart mythical beings in strange ethereal realms. Seeing as a comic is capable of detailing limitless imagination and graphic content, you can imagine all the things this version of Morningstar gets into. The television Lucifer, however, is a much more grounded series. Taking a cue from most procedural cop dramas like Castle or Elementary, the show depicts Lucifer as a mysterious eccentric that helps the police catch bad guys. The justification for this in the show is that Lucifer can call out people's desires, and he has an innate talent for punishing sinners. Even the show's more grandiose moments are closer in aesthetic to a show like Supernatural than anything in the comics. So which one has the better aesthetic? There is no contest here, the comic wins by a mile. Sure, those scenes where we get to see Lucifer's true face are exceptional, but this show is held back quite a bit by its network television budget and censorship. Even the network show Hannibal, or Netflix's The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, push the boundaries of censorship and demonic style on television more than the series focused on the literal devil has. So the big question for both of these series is the same. How do you make a story where the hero is the devil himself? Well, both properties approach that from very different angles. The comics Lucifer, in his first run anyway, is largely more apathetic than he is outright evil. Based on the version of Milton's Paradise Lost, this Lucifer was banished from heaven after a failed rebellion. This is played in a somewhat sympathetic manner that doesn't really wash over the fact that he's still the frickin' devil. Morningstar doesn't care at all about human lives or really anything beyond his own desires. Still, he rebukes various notorious claims that he is a liar or the source of human evil. He doesn't interfere in human affairs and purposefully chooses to be 100% honest, even if in a manipulative way, to stand against the claim that he is the Lord of Lies. The television Lucifer could not be more different. At the beginning of the series, Lucifer seems quite content to meddle with human affairs. Taking a page out of the more Christopher Marlowe Faust version of the devil, Lucifer frequently does deals with humans. He's also slowly becoming less and less evil over the course of the series with the help of a psychiatrist, Linda, and his love interest, Chloe. Eventually, he professes to love Earth and considers it his true home. So which one of these is better? While the Lucifer in the comics is certainly one of Vertigo's best, he's not their #1 anti-hero. His somewhat one-note sociopathic leanings often leave him lost in a sea of more interesting layered characters like Constantine, Morpheus, Swamp Thing, and the Doom Patrol. The television show, on the other hand, has done the seemingly impossible. They've created a layered, truly sympathetic take on the devil, who actually yearns to be the exact opposite of his reputation. This inner war he has with himself has been the best part of Lucifer, and is why the show keeps rising from beyond its cancellation grave. Perhaps the biggest thing the television show introduces to the Lucifer mythos is Chloe. In the original comic, Lucifer doesn't have a human love interest. That version would likely scoff at the very idea of one. The TV Lucifer has had to deal with the fact that he loves a mortal who has possibly been created for him to fall in love with. The Chloe-Lucifer relationship has been one of the most interesting aspects of the series, and is a welcome addition to the mythos in my book, especially the episodes that show how much havoc her very presence brings to his powers. A television show, unlike a comic, needs a large cast of characters to fill up time. So for the series, the minor character Amendiel was bumped up to a major character status. In the comic, he was a little more than a mindless brute who detested Lucifer. The show has taken time to flesh out his character, giving him a journey parallel to Lucifer's and even a son. This was obviously a welcome change from the Amendiel in the comics. Lucifer hogs most of the spotlight in the comic story. As far as angel character arcs go, Amendiel's isn't quite Castiel from Supernatural good, but it's in the ballpark. Maze may serve as similar function in the comic as she does in the show, but that's where the similarities end. The Mazekin in the comics is a lot more loyal to Lucifer overall, and is as much of a romantic interest as this Lucifer could have. Though she did slash his face, leaving a permanent scar the character has carried ever since. She even goes on to become a new ruler of Lucifer's domain. The television version is a fiercer character with a broader arc and more agency. Her alliance to Lucifer certainly isn't as strong, but her character is more interesting. Also, that gross two-faced thing she sometimes rocks, yeah, that's her permanent look for a while in the comics. She can't even really speak, which gets annoying to read after a while. Perhaps the biggest differences between the show and the comic are the themes that they try to explore. For the comics, it was all about free will. Lucifer's entire journey was about trying to find a form of existence that wasn't predetermined. All he wanted was the freedom to make his own choices, instead of relying on the grand cosmic plan for the universe. He even goes so far as to create his own universe, complete with its own Big Bang and Garden of Eden. It was pretty hardcore. The TV show went in a completely different direction. Although there are moments where the show dances around commentary on predetermination and free will, that's not really the focus. No, Lucifer is a lot more about a divine but cursed being learning to accept himself and love. He has to learn how to be both physically and emotionally vulnerable around Chloe, a thing that is contrary to his entire nature. So which one of these is stronger? Sorry, TV show, but the comic storyline is classic. We've seen plenty of shows and movies explore an anti-hero style character coming to grips with himself and his loved ones. We haven't seen many stories about a nearly all-powerful being trying to escape the cosmic maze he was born into by recreating it himself. The comic stands as one of the prime examples of why the medium should be considered literature. The TV show is great, but it just doesn't aim quite that high. So when the devil leaves his post, that leaves an obvious hole. Who do you get to follow the devil? Could you imagine that kind of pressure? It's very much depicted as pure chaos down there, to the point that Amendiel is sent to get Lucifer back into the game. In this version, Lucifer is really the only one who's able to keep the demons in line. He even goes back to ruling just because there wasn't anyone else who could get the job done, and you thought quitting your job was hard. In the Sandman comics, the answer is more complicated. Morningstar leaves the entire realm to Morpheus for him to pick who will take the throne. A wide pantheon of mystical beings come to try to get the job, including Loki and Thor, but not the Marvel ones. He ends up giving the job to two angels, who try to reform the eternal punishment, but actually make it much worse. Both of these versions have plenty of merit. Morpheus trying to basically interview people for one of the biggest jobs in the universe is pretty fascinating. It also provides a compelling problem for the television Lucifer to potentially realize that he will never be able to leave his domain behind. I'll give them both points this time. One of the biggest differences between Lucifer and the other Lucifer's journey is how they deal with the reclamation of their angel wings. The television show Lucifer manages to get them back only to burn them, and then wake up in the desert later to find them mysteriously returned. The comic Lucifer has to go on a globe-trotting adventure where he has to trick and find his way through an entirely different pantheon so he could use his wings to help him create a universe. Sorry, but the comics one is much more metal than the TV show. TV Lucifer just doesn't have the same level of game his comic counterpart has. In the end, both versions of the Lucifer Morningstar character are pretty darn cool, even if they are very different. Which one do you prefer? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more from CBR.